Thank you for joining us in 2021 at the Property Management Committee here at FAAR. As you could have maybe seen from my logo that I had up on the screen, we do have a sponsor for this morning's event. So before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to one of our fabulous sponsors and longtime supporters, Topside Federal Credit Union. We have Lauren Bruning. So Lauren, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. As a member of FAAR, you are all eligible for membership at Topside Federal Credit Union. You might remember us as NSWC. We are the same credit union, the same people, the same heart for the community. We just have a name now that better encompasses the community that we serve. So as a member-owned not-for-profit credit union, we're truly here to support you. The great thing about that is that our members are our top priority because they actually own shares of the credit union. Some of the ways that we support our members are things like our youth saves account. We offer 5% on the first 500 until their 20th birthday. So if you have any kids, grandkids, those are all great opportunities for them to save money. Along with that, we have a great rewards program. So our kids that are under the age of 9 receive a quarter saver when they open their account. They fill that up with $10 worth of quarters. We're gonna match it. So that's a great opportunity to share with them how exciting it is to save money at a young age. As they turn 9 years old, we're actually going to offer them $5 for the first 4 A's on their report card at the end of every school year. That follows them until they graduate. So that's $20 at the end of every school year that we're saying, great job for working hard and doing a great job. So along with that, at 9 years old, we actually offer a checking account for our students with a parent's permission, of course. And that might seem scary at first to think about, but hear me out. Everyone uses debit these days. I actually heard a report yesterday that said 50% of consumers are using no-touch spending right now because they don't want to touch money. They don't want to touch any of the terminals. And so that's the kind of environment our kids are growing up in. And we have a great My Card Rules app that pairs with their card. Mom and dad can turn it off when it's not supposed to be used. They can turn it back on at a spending limit. They're only supposed to spend $20 or the $100 in their account. When they go to the movies, great. It's gonna cut off right after that $20 spending limit. If you want to set a location setting, and they are supposed to be at the movies, they end up at the mall, that card is not going to swipe at the mall. So there's a lot of great features added in there so that they can learn how to use it wisely before they turn 18 and know everything, right? So I actually use this app myself because I get a notification every time my card number is touched. So you'll be able to use that as well for your kids, because if they're at McDonald's and they're supposed to be at home, you're going to see that transaction and you can even turn their card off and say, get home. But for me, I like to know exactly what's going on with my card. So that's for all of our members, but we love to pair it with our youth saves. And then of course, when they turn 16 and 17, we offer a $25 bonus to say, great job on getting your first job. When they call us, let us know that they got their direct deposit. We're gonna just put that in their account to reward them. We have other great benefits for our members. If any of you are military, active, dependent, retired, we want to say thank you for your service. We have an 8% savings account on the first 500 for life. And then for all of our members, we currently have a credit card balance transfer opportunity right now that's 3.9%. And that's for any cash balances made before February 15th. We actually extended this one because we know that times are harder this year. And so we want to be able to give opportunities to our members. And that rate, 3.90 on the transfers and cash advances, is going to last until 2026. So that's a great savings. And then I'm also happy to let you know that as of December, we have added 1% cash back on any non-Topside refinanced auto loans with us and we'll give up to $250 back. That's not going away. That's forever. So if you want to take advantage of the great extras that the dealership will give you and then refinance at a really low rate with us, awesome. You can know that you're going to do that and get $250 back. All of those are available to take advantage of on our website. We have great online mobile banking and a mobile app that you can do all of your transactions. You can even transfer money between financial institutions. And we even have a new pay a person feature. So instead of using Venmo or Cash App, you can stick with us and know that your money is a little safer going between. If I didn't work at the credit union, I would never go into a branch. And that's because I can do everything from my phone. We do have several locations in the area. If you do prefer to be in person, we're not going to charge you to come in. We have 2 locations in Fredericksburg, one in Massaponax across from Publix, and then one across, or actually right next to Almonds Barbecue on Route 1 near downtown Fredericksburg. We have 2 in King George as well, one on Base and one near the Arby's and Taco Bell in Dahlgren. I'm also happy to tell you that if you'd like to join today, all it costs is $1 into your account, in your savings account. That's your $1 share of the credit union. You are actually my boss if you are a member of the credit union, so thank you. But any other money that you put into your account is yours to spend. It's not our business. So I am going to drop, actually she's already dropped the link in the chat for you. But if I can, I will drop a how to join flyer for you. Does anyone have any questions before I go?
Lauren, that's great information. I wish you had a card like that for spouses. I would do that to my husband. He goes out for groceries and comes home with a TV.
Hey, you can put that on his card. I will tell.
Maybe I'll be calling you after this. Well, thank you for the great information. If anybody does have questions for Lauren, maybe you can put your email address in the chat so people can contact you directly. Thank you so much for being here and for sponsoring. I'd also be remiss if I didn't recognize our chairs. I don't think Don Yosmans, who's our chairman again this year, is on the call yet, but I know we have Don Pett. He was experiencing some phone issues, but I know Don says hello and welcome. He is our vice chair and always has great questions about what's going on. So without further ado, I will get right to it. Before we go to the main event, I just want to also recognize Drew Myers. Drew doesn't have to turn on or say hello, but he is our political representative from the National Association of Realtors and is my go-to with questions for everything. So thank you, Drew, for being here. And now I'd like to introduce Megan Booth. Megan, if I butcher your title, please correct me. But Megan is the Director of Federal Housing Valuation, Commercial Real Estate Policy and Programs for the National Association of Realtors. So it's a long title, but I think that means Megan is very important. And she's always been very generous with her time when she's come to FAAR meetings and is a wealth of knowledge. So Megan, I will turn it over to you. I know that this has sort of been an almost unprecedented year with the property management. We're usually looking to the state for changes. The state is usually our guiding force on what's going on with landlord-tenant interactions. And now we've had some big stuff come down from the federal level. So Megan, please give us a little overview of where we're at right now, which always seems to be changing.
Yes, you're definitely right. And we've had a lot of activity in the last month. If you give me a permission, I could share my screen and I have a short PowerPoint, but if that's too annoying, then I don't have to do that. Oh, let me see. Yep, I got it. Thank you. All right, let's just go to the. It's always hard to get it to, give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay. So some quick background, which I'm sure you're all fully aware of this. President Trump in August decided he wanted the Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC to consider an eviction moratorium. We fought vigorously against that, but on September 4th, they in fact did issue a federal eviction moratorium. It originally went from September 4th to December 31st. It's now been extended through the end of this month, as I'm sure you all know, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. It applies to all rental units. It does not apply to American Samoa, continuing to not apply to American Samoa because they have not had really any cases of COVID. It applies to almost everyone. They have to, all they have to do is sign a self-certification. They do have to certify under penalty of perjury, and I'm going to highlight one of the 5 things they have to say, which is that they have used their best efforts to obtain rental assistance. We'll keep that one in mind as we go forward. Why do we care? I know why you all care. More than 40% of realtors own and manage at least one rental property, and almost half of the rental stock in America is owned by mom and pops. So we have worked very closely with our coalition partners, National Multi-Housing Council, National Apartment Association, Council for Affordable and Rural Housing, you name it. We basically started our campaign in March. We sent something like 37 letters to Congress asking them for rental assistance between March and December. We also met with the White House. We met with Treasury folks. We met with HUD folks about the importance of this issue. And we finally got ourselves heard in the December bill that passed the Congress, which is what I'm going to mostly talk about. I also want to point out NAR is supporting, continues to support legal action against the CDC eviction moratorium that was filed in DC Circuit Court by the Alabama Association and the Georgia Association of Realtors, with plaintiffs in both those states, with a number of their tenants who had submitted the declaration and had not been paying their rent. So that case is ongoing in DC federal court. And so we'll see where we end up there. But in the meantime, the biggest thing that we really wanted to make sure was that a rental assistance program by the federal government would be available and would work. And the bill that had passed the House back last June actually provided for rental assistance, which we were very excited about. However, we weren't so excited about the method it used. It used a very small, underutilized program at HUD, which had to do with emergency homeless grants. And we were concerned that trying to funnel all of the rental assistance money through a homeless grant program would not be very effective. It also allowed the money to go directly to residents, which we also were concerned about. So the good news is, in the bill that passed Congress in December and was signed by the president, finally, he took a little bit to sign it. We got nervous there, but he did sign it. It allocated $25 billion total based on population to every state in the country. Every state will get at least 200 million. And I have the figure for Virginia. I think it's 598 million that the state of Virginia will get. It's allocated through the Treasury Department. The most important part, housing providers can apply on behalf of their tenants. They must have their approval. We're going to get to that in a second. But you can apply on behalf of your tenants, which I think is critical to this program because, as we know, tenants who are really in trouble are busy trying to pay their other bills, trying to find a job, trying to deal with, student learning and childcare and all of those issues, and aren't going to want to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork, even if it's to help pay their rent. The second most important thing is it includes not only their current rent, their back rent, but also utilities and fees. We're going to talk about that again in a second. This money will be available through December 31st, although we imagine it's going to be paid significantly faster than that. And it did extend the CDC eviction moratorium for 30 days from December 31st through January. Yeah, Virginia gets 568 million. I am going to guess, but this is just my guess, that it's going to be through the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, only because you all had an existing rental assistance program that was run through VDHCD, so I assume they are still going to be the ones who run it. The state had to apply by midnight last night. Fingers crossed, they applied for the money. We are desperately asking Treasury to be a little bit flexible. They announced that on January 6th. They announced that the deadline was January 12th, which we thought was insane. To give states 6 days to learn about the program. Some states had elections where they changed their government to get their new people settled and to apply within 6 days. We thought was a little extreme. The legislation did require Treasury to get the money out the door within 30 days. So that's why there was a deadline, but we are hopeful they are going to be flexible if there are states that may have missed the deadline for good reasons. So, but the money, they were supposed to request the money by last night. And so hopefully the money is going to literally be out the door in the next 5 days is the goal of the Treasury Department. So the Trump administration is currently running this program and they are working to get the money out the door. So what do we want? And we have been talking to Trump Treasury staff, Trump HUD staff, incoming Biden transition Treasury staff, Biden transition HUD staff, our friends on Capitol Hill on both the Democratic and Republican side, and been urging them to have Treasury put out guidance for these 5 things. So the first thing is provide flexibility. So we want to make sure that it is not challenging for people to demonstrate that they qualify for the program. We want to make sure that that process is simple and seamless for people to provide flexibility. And a certification or an affidavit of the need should be sufficient. So many states that were successful in their state rental programs simply required a self-certification from a resident that they met those qualifications. Furthermore, because the legislation allows a landlord to apply, but must have the consent of the resident, one thing that we are strongly pushing for is that if a resident provided you with the CDC declaration, which, as you recall, requires them to declare that they have been seeking rental assistance, that should be sufficient for you to say they want you to seek this rental assistance. And so instead of having to get another signature from them, which we know as a landlord right now, if you tried to call a tenant who hasn't paid you for the last 7 months, they think you're calling to tell them they're being evicted in 18 days. So they're not going to call you back or read your email or read your letter. So what we think you should be able to do is use that CDC declaration and then send a certified letter to the tenant telling them you are requesting aid on their behalf. So that's one thing we are urging the Treasury to do under this program, is to allow states to allow for that. We want to make it as seamless as possible. The second thing is safe harbors. One reason why a number of states did not use CARES Act money for a rental assistance program was because they were afraid of the rules around that money and that money could be taken back from them. This program does allow for unused funds or inappropriately used funds to be reclaimed by the Treasury Department. That's going to scare some states and localities from using the money. So we want to make sure that there's a safe harbor, that if you were operating in good faith and you felt like you were following the intent of the law, and that you are doing everything in your power to make sure that you are following the intent of the law, that you should have a safe harbor and your money shouldn't be reclaimed from you. The third one is to ensure broad distribution of funds across all types of properties. So single family rentals, multifamily rentals, manufactured housing, rural communities, everyone should have equal access to this rental assistance money. We want to make sure that states and localities communicate the availability of the assistance. Not everybody is like you and listens to what's going on in the policy world. And so we want to make sure landlords and residents know about the availability of these funds. And then the last thing is, we don't want any extraneous requirements. So some states that used the previous CARES money for a rental assistance program, put crazy requirements on it. So for example, if you took the rental assistance, you had to say you would not evict the tenant for a year. Even if they stopped paying again. If you took the rental assistance, you had to only take 60 cents on the dollar of what they owed, things like that. We don't want those added on, because what happened in states that did that, they didn't even use the small amounts of money that they had allocated for rental assistance because nobody wanted to participate in that program. Landlords have already shouldered a huge burden during this time of carrying all that lost revenue for months and months and months and months and months. They shouldn't have to continue to lose revenue moving forward through this program. So those are our 5 main talking points. Like I said, we've been pushing these with everyone who will take a meeting with us. And we're really hoping we can get Treasury to put out some clear guidance expressing all 5 of these things. So what is the next step? The Biden administration and the brand new Congress have said they want to do more COVID relief. So what does that mean? First thing is, are they going to extend the eviction moratorium? That is probably the question I get asked 10 times a day by landlords all around the country. So right now it's only extended to the end of this month. That's quickly ending. What's going to happen? So the Biden administration comes in on January 20th, and will they extend the eviction moratorium? We totally expect they will extend the eviction moratorium. It seems very unlikely that the first thing that President Biden wants to see is a mass eviction on February 1st. So we do expect the eviction moratorium to be extended. We are urging them to extend it short term, maybe even only do it, 60 days at a time. something like that. We are the belief though, if I had to guess, if someone said, you have to make a choice right now, what do you think it's going to be? I bet they extend it through June 30th. But that is just a gut feeling. I don't have anything to back that up. No one has told me that. But I feel like that would give them some time to come together and figure out what they really want to do. So I have concerns that it might be extended through June 30th. What the next step is more rental assistance. 25 billion is a drop in the bucket. All estimates say that the overall need across the nation is more than 70 billion. So that was a down payment. But what we need to happen is we need the state programs to work effectively. The quicker we can get money out the door into the hands of housing providers, which by the way, the money under this program cannot be given to residents. The money either can go to landlords or to utilities, because utilities is another thing they can pay for. So it can go directly to a utility or it can go directly to a landlord. It cannot be given to tenants under the way this is written in the laws, which is good news. But we need way more money than this. So hopefully if we can start to show successes in these state programs, that the money is getting out there and housing providers are being paid and people aren't being evicted, then we can hopefully get more money allocated by the government. What are other things we're looking for? There's still a number of things under COVID relief that we're looking for. Oops, if I shut down this, I'm going to just copy this link and put it in the chat for you. We have updated our FAQ document to indicate all the new things we know about these provisions in the law, and we will continue to update it. As soon as states start receiving the money, we will have a chart on our website listing with a link to where the landlord goes to apply for the money. As soon as states start actually doing that. Like I said, we expect the money to start going out in the next 5 to 7 days is what Treasury is saying. They're going to get the money out there as soon as possible. The law required them to get it out within 30 days of the bill being signed, which was, the bill being signed, which I think ended up being December 28th. I could be wrong about that exact date, but it's something like that. So they need to get that money out there fast, and they are trying to comply with that part of the law. I will tell you, many federal agencies ignore when there's a deadline. So it's shocking that they're actually working to meet it, but they are, which is good. So as soon as the money can get out there, the better, right? So it's a lot of this is going to depend on the states. I encourage you for your lobbyists to work with your local reps and to work with Virginia Association and the governor there to make sure that they don't put crazy restrictions on the money or crazy provisions around it. The law was pretty flexible and open on it. There are some like floofy language around like priority should be given to people who make less than X amount of area median income. But the important thing to think about that is it's based on literally their income today. So if they are still unemployed, if they're a hospitality worker or retail worker or somebody who literally has no job, then their current income is zero. Like it's based on what their today income is. So don't get all caught up on what their taxes were in 2020 or in 2019 or any of that. That is not the income level they're talking about. They're literally talking about what their income is today. And the law really just says priority should be given to those people, but it doesn't say 40% of the funds have to be spent on those people or 75% of the funds. It doesn't say how they have to prioritize that. So I think that's excellent. Let's see. Oh, great questions in here already. Okay, if they extend it, can landlords charge for months to come, or is it only rent in arrears? Great question. So the way the law, the rental assistance program is allocated, it's for current rent and it's outgoing up till 6 months. So it's a 6 months outgoing. So it's current rent up to 6 months in advance. You can't get it in advance, like you would get it when it's due, but you can request it for up to 6 months ongoing. But I think they have to recertify that they still don't have a job or something, but you can keep it going. So it's current rent up to 6 months, ahead of time rent, and rent in arrears for up to a year. So, and don't forget, if you, under the CDC eviction moratorium, which started in September, I don't know if Virginia or Fredericksburg had its own eviction moratorium, but under the federal law, you could charge late fees, penalties, any of that, and that can be covered under this. It specifically said, and other fees associated with the housing. So that, we believe, that includes all of those fees as well. So you should be able to recoup a lot of that money. One of the biggest questions I get is, my tenant just left. They just left. They owed me 8 months of rent and they're gone. Now what? I don't have a good answer for that one. there isn't really a provision to cover, and I mean, I hate to say it this way, but I think you're just out of luck if that happened. There's not really a provision in this bill if the tenant has actually vacated the property for you to get that money back through this program. You can go through whatever normal channels you would go through to try and recover that money, which I know is nearly impossible, but there aren't provisions in this bill to cover that. So if your tenant has actually vacated, no longer lives in the property, I don't think you're going to be able to get the money for this. But if the tenant is still there, like I said, our biggest concern is those tenants that are not going to respond to you, because they owe you so much rent. And when you contact them, they literally are thinking you're contacting them because on January 31st, you're evicting them, right? So they don't want to talk to you. So we want to make it, we want to try and make it as simple as possible for a landlord to say that they've gotten the approval of their tenant to request this rental assistance. So like I said, we're hoping the CDC notification plus a certified letter will be appropriate, but it's really going to depend on what the states say. And then we're going to work hard to make sure that Treasury puts out some kind of guidelines that make it clear that can be very flexible on how you get that consent from a tenant, because we know how challenging that's going to be. And the folks that we met the Treasury transition team for Biden yesterday, and they were very sympathetic for that. Most of the people on that transition team come from the housing community, so they were very sympathetic to those issues. So we're hopeful that we'll get some good guidance from them, but I think that guidance could come beyond the point when states start to develop a program. So we're going to have to work with the states as well.
Hey,
Does anyone
Megan.
else have questions? Yes.
Megan, can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, Don.
Hey.
Yep.
Quick question for you. So I think part of the problem that I've experienced is that the COVID related non-payment of rent has just been blanketed. And the problem is there's no access to courts because of that wording. And people who don't have a COVID related non-payment of rent issue, the landlord still can't access the courts to resolve their problems. And that small group has been completely ignored in all of this because the courts don't differentiate. They said, no, you can't evict anyone.
Well, and honestly, the CDC eviction moratorium didn't require it to be COVID related, which was
the
crazy.
aid does, and you can't apply for
the new aid does not. I don't know what your Virginia aid did, but this bill does not require it to be COVID related.
In the wording of the document that they're supposed to, apply for aid, or the it says specifically what is your COVID related.
So that's your existing program. That's your existing state program, which they designed based on the COVID relief funds they got. This new federal rental assistance program does not require that. So the previous money that states got had to be used for COVID relief. That was CARES Act money that had to be used for COVID relief specifically. Right. This legislation, this new law does not require that.
Okay.
Anyone who has lost income, it doesn't have to be COVID related.
Okay, then I guess what I'm asking then is, are they going to word that so that it's understood by even the courts, which don't understand what's going on right now, that access to the courts for non-payment of rent for non-COVID related issues, they should have access to the courts?
Yeah, so no, those are two separate things. So the CDC eviction moratorium is completely separate from the federal rental assistance program. The CDC eviction moratorium does not require a person to have a COVID related reason for not paying their rent. And so if that is what is simply extended, then the courts can still prevent you from evicting regardless of what the reason is that they are not paying their rent. So it does not require it to be COVID related. So that's the eviction moratorium that is the court issue. So depending on how that's extended, assuming it's extended, I don't have a crystal ball, I don't know, but assuming it's extended, if they simply extend the existing eviction moratorium, that does not have any requirement that it has to be COVID related. Similarly, the federal rental assistance program, the new program they just implemented with the $25 billion, does not require a tenant to be failing to get rental assistance. They don't have to have had a COVID related event. They simply have to not be able to pay their rent. So it's good on the federal rental assistance side. Like anyone who's not paying their rent can qualify for the federal rental assistance. It's bad on the eviction side in that anyone who's not paying their rent cannot be evicted.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that description. That helps.
Yeah, it's hopefully we can, if they do in fact extend the eviction moratorium, they do it in a different way. So the one that was done by the CDC is very, very sloppy, which is why it's being challenged all over the country in the courts, because it says that the reason they are doing it is to prevent the spread of COVID, but it doesn't require COVID to be a reason why you're not paying your rent, right? So I totally get why that's a crazy thing. But that's exactly what they did. That's how they worded that CDC eviction moratorium. Like I said, the CDC really has nothing to do with housing. And so why a federal agency that has nothing to do with housing wrote an eviction moratorium without talking to even the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who understands housing better, was kind of crazy, which is why that eviction moratorium is so flaky. Does anyone else have questions? I know this is a lot to take in, and it's really gonna be different based on how your state handles the money. So hopefully the fact that Virginia had an existing rental assistance program is helpful in some ways, that they understand how to do it, but it also sort of gives them a bias already based on how they designed that program. And the federal law does give them flexibility to sort of design the program to some level the way they want. So you want to make sure that they don't necessarily, if there's parts of the state law that right now that like Don was saying, like for your state law requires somebody to have a COVID related reason for paying. Well, that's not a requirement of this federal legislation. So you wouldn't want that to be a requirement of how they distribute the federal rental assistance funds. So some things you're going to want to do there to communicate with your officials to explain the differences there.
So I'm looking right now at so our program is run through DHCD, like you said, Megan, and it's the Rental and Mortgage Assistance Program. And I don't know if anybody I know, Dawn, you work with the program. When I'm looking at the eligibility, it does look fairly wide ranging. I know it's COVID related, but it's loss of hours, inability to find work, unwillingness to find work because of a high risk of contracting COVID, or loss of employment because of childcare issues. So it does seem like it's a pretty wide net. And it is income prioritized. People making, I think, 80% of AMI and lower are prioritized. But have any of you had tenants who have been denied funding assistance through RAMP because it was non-COVID?
No, we've applied. No, we've actually applied for about 5 or 6 at this point, and not one has been denied. And basically, with it being extended, we didn't have to like reinvent the wheel to reapply. We just had to submit updated information. It's been pretty, knock on wood. I wish I had some real wood here to knock on. It's been pretty seamless, honestly.
Good. That's great to hear.
I see that it says divorce is not included, but loss of support payments is included. I don't know if it says child support or spousal support. So if it's
so the problem is when a divorce is just happening and the two people were living in the property, there hasn't been a court hearing to, divvy up anything. They're both still on the lease. And all of a sudden those payments stop being made. And if this is going on for 5 or 6 months, there is zero access to the courts. Okay. And the landlords are just eating this because they're stuck in the middle. These are not people who have any loss of income. They're just refusing to pay because they think the other person should pay. And when you can't access the courts at all because it's all COVID, well, this has nothing to do with COVID. And so these landlords specifically, and I know this is probably a small number of the percentage, but to be honest with you, our area in general has been relatively, in terms of comparing it to like urban areas, has been relatively untouched percentage wise in terms of these cases of mass unemployment and threatened to be homeless and all this. Our market is fairly stable. The problem is, for Virginia specifically, there's huge parts of Virginia that are basically not affected by, this mass COVID unemployment problem, but these rules all apply to the whole area, and they just blanketed it and closed the courts, and that's not.
And that was a Virginia state decision. So I will say the CDC put out further guidance I feel like it was in late September or October, that made it clear that it was only people who had submitted this declaration the CDC declaration that they needed this relief due to fear of being homeless, blah, blah, all these things, that is the only people that were not allowed to be evicted, right? Are the people who did that. And in fact, you could challenge in court, the CDC put out guidance saying they were not stopping people from being able to challenge that declaration. So if someone filled out the declaration, you could challenge it. But I know a number of states, Virginia is not alone, most states in the country just put a stop to it. Alabama put a complete and total stop to it. Even states that you would consider more conservative put a total stop to it because they were afraid that the penalties in the CDC eviction moratorium are so high, and the courts felt that they could apply to them as well. On the other hand, I know realtors in Texas and South Carolina that have been evicting away.
Well,
I
went to court.
It really depends.
I went to court, and I was flat out told by the judge that there are no evictions for anything, and you know,
so that's
no
just your state
anyone being
courts
here today, basically.
Yeah, that's just your state courts. Way over.
So I think part of the confusion too is when they come up with these federal guidelines, and then there's separate state guidelines. Nobody really knows what the real rule is, and that's part of the problem too, with everyone kind of calling this federal and then calling this state. And the state has been doing their own thing because the federal government really didn't do that much at first. And then it kind of got stuck in the middle and bounced around to where everyone kind of did their own thing. And basically what it did was lawyers, attorneys really didn't know what the rules were because they were changing basically every 2 weeks. They were changing. It was crazy. And so judges, they didn't know either because it was changing so quickly. And they just said, you know what? I'm out of this. I'm just not going to fool with it because it's just not worth it.
That's exactly right. At the same time, I mean, so this is one of these cases where you have to be careful what you're asking for, because it's good that landlord-tenant law is not regulated at the federal level, right? We want it to be local and state, but it means it can be local and state, and so they can do what they want. And I think you're exactly right, because the federal eviction moratorium was so badly constructed that it scared judges across the country, and they didn't want to process evictions and then have the CDC come and say, you weren't supposed to do that. We're fining you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So instead, the judges were like, put their hands up, like, can't do nothing. So unfortunately, that's what happened in a lot of places.
Other questions from folks? So Megan, I just wanted to get your perspective on sort of the long term here. What do you sense is the feeling of Congress on this kind of stuff? I mean, a lot of this gets kind of in the weeds. Like you said, with state law, there's a lot of different rules across the regions. I was just reading an article about Seattle that does not allow evictions from November to March, which was terrifying to me. We have had a proposal like that here in the Fredericksburg region, as you all know, we've talked about before. Do you see a sort of wholesale shift in the way that we're looking at that landlord-tenant relationship from the federal level, or is this really temporary, focused on COVID impacts?
So, so let's start with saying, I certainly hope it's temporary. I do think the one benefit I think we've had with time. So as I said, there was a bill that passed the House in June that provided rental assistance, but also tied landlords' hands in a lot of ways. And the bill that we ended up getting in December was much, much better from a housing provider standpoint. So I think we had time to educate a lot of members of Congress. And so I think that's something we're going to have to continue, but I feel like we're in a better place there. Even one of the more liberal members of Congress, Maxine Waters, who chairs the House Financial Services Committee, who originally passed that first bill, she at several hearings in December talked about the impact that all of this, the eviction moratorium and all of it has been having on mom and pop landlords. And we had a number of our members reach out to her who were from communities in her district that were real, like landlords who were barely making their mortgage payments because they weren't getting any rental income and had gotten forbearance, but weren't sure how long it was going to last, and all of those types of things. So I think we were given a great opportunity to educate members of Congress. And so I'm hopeful that that's going to have some long lasting impacts, and we will continue to do that. So I feel like there's a little bit more, I don't want to say sympathy, but understanding of the burdens placed on housing providers during this time. If you think about it, this is an argument I make on another issue, but if you think about it, what are the two things that people need the most? They need food and shelter. Well, grocery stores did not have to advance people food, right? People didn't all get a free account at the grocery store to buy bread and eggs and milk, right? They had to figure out how to get that. The burden wasn't put on the grocery store. So similarly, why were housing providers expected to carry this burden of so many months of non-payment through this whole crisis? So I feel like we had a really good opportunity to educate people. I don't think people realize how much of the rental market in this country is not run by big corporations. People think about rental housing and they think about the 200-unit apartment building. That is not the majority of rental housing in this country. The majority of rental housing in this country is run by 6 or less units, run by a mom and pop or scattered single-family home rentals. That's what the rental housing market is in this country. So I think we had a great chance to educate people, and I think there's a much better understanding of that now. And so much research has come out in the last 6 months making that argument, honestly, on both sides, from the private sector, but also from some of these well-respected housing advocacy groups. Urban Institute is one that comes to mind. They've done some great pieces on the importance of the small landlords and how critical they are to the housing market. So I feel like we've done a really good job, and I'm hoping that we can continue that effort so that people have a better understanding of what that market is. And it's not just big corporations who can suck it up. That's not what the rental housing market is in America. So I think we've had that opportunity to do that. Now, that being said, I think they are going to, like I said earlier, I think they are going to extend the eviction moratorium. I think there's no doubt about that. There's no way the new administration is going to come in and we see, millions of people being evicted on February 1st, right? So I think there's no doubt that they're going to extend it. The question will be how long they're going to extend it for. As I said, I'm almost hoping it's till the end of June, because that's better than all year or something, or the end of September. But we are, like I said, we're urging them to do it in small increments to see how the rental assistance is going. And then, everyone knows vaccines are starting. So at some point, restaurants are going to be fully opened again, and, retail places will be fully functioning. And so people will get their incomes back, and then this will be over. So we don't want them to overextend it. It'd be better to extend it in small groupings as the rental assistance money is provided. So we'll see, fingers crossed. We'll find out probably in about 2 weeks.
Agree. Other questions? I just wanted to I know we've asked this a few times, for those of you who are willing to share, how much non-payment of rent are you all seeing in your portfolios? Understanding, as Don said, that we do have a little bit of a different mix, a lot of federal government employees, a lot of folks just working from home, not losing jobs, but we certainly have a very robust service sector that, while Virginia, thank Governor Northam, has remained open, certainly people are still suffering so much at reduced capacities and with a lot of people's fear of going out in public anyway. So how much non-payment are y'all seeing, if you're willing to share? Not too much. I know Dawn said she applied for a few assistance. So we seem to have been, I've heard, numbers from the Richmond area of thousands of, unlawful detainers that are going to be filed. But I haven't heard the same anecdotal information from our region. So Don says the same as any year. Is that still true for some of you, the rest of y'all who, I know Candy, you have a pretty big portfolio, and Terry, I'm interested, I don't know if you can hear, if you're able to join, but from the sort of the vacation home market, what are we seeing? So Terry Moberly represents the Lake Anna area. And, I wonder if my perspective of heading out to Lake Anna is that it was quite busy this summer. It was an easy way to get out and still distance from people.
The vacation rental department had an astronomical year last year. In the beginning, when all of this started, they had a lot of cancellations, but once things kind of settled down a little bit, May, June, they started getting bookings, and they had probably their best year this last year. And they've already booked several houses for this year that through the summer that are, the big houses, the big expensive ones. So that doesn't seem to be affected much. And as far as the long-term rentals that I manage, I've only had 1 or 2 that have been delayed. They've been paying on time, or been paying, but sometimes are delayed. And they're in the, he's a bartender, the one I'm thinking of mainly. So, but it's not any more worse for me than it has been in the past few years.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing with resort communities that we've been seeing across the country. I know, for example, I went with my family just to get the hell out of my house to Sandbridge for a week, and we worked remotely from Sandbridge instead of Arlington, just to get away. And I know I was looking for a vacation for a similar rental in the North Carolina Outer Banks for over the holidays, and I couldn't find one because they were all booked up. Because I think it's the same way. They're not necessarily willing to like maybe get on a plane and go somewhere or go to a hotel where, you know, you're going to encounter other people, but a rental house, you can just be with yourself. At least it's somewhere different and not the same four walls you've been stuck in for 9 months. So yeah, we've been seeing that all across the country. Vacation rentals have been doing fantastically. And I don't know if any of you also do single family sales, but we've also seen the sales market is doing great. Because I think people are also got really sick of their house and need a change. And so we've seen home sales are doing remarkably well. So unfortunately for most of you, the only part of the market that's really been suffering is commercial, either in rental housing, and also obviously the office and the retail markets are hurting bad.
Yeah, as these folks can attest, our sale market has just been off the charts. I mean, we have a 0.7 month supply of inventory in our 6-county jurisdiction, and it's a little crazy out there right now. So, yeah. Annette, I see you say that there's tenants are having some trouble getting results. You know, when we first started talking about RAMP, and it might be different now, we were on a call with one of our state delegates, Josh Cole, back in September, and his message was the program is undersubscribed. Please get this information out. People don't even know they can apply for it. So the Rappahannock United Way is our administrator of the program, and we've got a very close relationship with them. So if you are experiencing problems, I know I have a lady who's not on the call that I've been trying to help, and we can't fix them all. There are sometimes issues, you know, that are preventing them from going through smoothly. But if you're having issues getting some of that stuff through, please let us know so we can at least touch base with United Way and just see, are they running a delay on, you know, processing applications or getting those funds out. We want to make sure that we have that open line of communication with that administrator, because they're very focused on making sure that folks do not end up in a housing crisis because of the delay in getting those funds out to them. So please let us know. All right. Anybody else have questions, concerns? This is your chance. You've got NAR on the phone. Any other questions for Megan? Obviously, her title is quite wide ranging. So if there's any other housing questions, please let her know. Well, this has been wonderful. Megan, I always enjoy having you on. I always learn so much. I really appreciate it. And we are actually having our Virginia Association of Realtors folks on in our next meeting in March, which will be after our legislative session, so that we can talk about, you know, what's going on the state level, because obviously that is incredibly important. And there are a lot of things coming up at the state level. As you all know, we have our 14-day notice that has been changed in, you know, the last couple of months. There are definitely calls to make that a permanent 14-day notice. There's going to be lots of stuff that comes up, and hopefully we will get a great set of information from our VAR folks. So I am seeing a question, Candy, throughout. Is anyone issuing pay or quit notices? Anybody?
Because that's allowed under the CDC eviction moratorium. They do allow you to issue those, although, again, as Don mentioned, your courts might not care, but.
No, doesn't seem like it right now. Terry says I am, but not following through. Yeah, I feel like we'll have a lot to talk about in the next couple of months. I know we always keep kicking the can down the road. You know, once we get to this month, everything will be clear. Once we get here, things will be clear. But it does seem like hopefully by the time we get into the March timeframe, we will understand a little bit more the pace of vaccine rollout. Maybe they will even know how the stinking vaccine works. I was like flabbergasted when I heard that. They don't know if it just makes your symptoms not as severe or if you can't pass it on. So maybe we'll know a little bit more come that March timeframe and have a better idea of when some of this stuff might abate. But, you know, we've been saying that for the past year and it really hasn't happened. Okay, so people seem to be doing it. And yes, the 5-day pay, it's not a 5-day pay or quit now, right? Dawn, please correct me if I'm, or Dawn if I'm speaking incorrectly, but we have a 14-day notice now, not 5. And it does seem likely that that will become a permanent feature of Virginia law, that we will not go back to a 5-day. But we'll keep y'all obviously posted on that. I think there'll be a lot of landlord tenant stuff that comes up in the General Assembly this year. And you know, we'll make sure that we let y'all know, and if there is any advocacy required around that, to contact our elected officials. I think, and I know that we do a great job of keeping them, you know, in the loop on some of the things that are going on. We, as I said, we had a freshman member of our General Assembly delegation who thought it would be a good idea to not allow evictions in cases of extreme weather, which was defined as over 90 or under 50. So in Virginia, that means we would not have been able to evict for many, many, many months of the year, and what kind of problem that would pose for folks. So, okay, well, I will wrap this up if no one else has any questions or comments. This is great information, and thank you, Megan, for being here. Thank you, Drew, for being here as well. And we will meet again in March. I think the date is March 3rd. Don't quote me on that. It's that first Wednesday of the month. And we have already secured some folks from the Virginia Realtors Government Affairs staff will come and update us on what happened in the General Assembly session and what that means for your industry. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks
Megan.
for having
Great
me.
to have you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.